Good morning to you all. I am indeed happy to make this presentation today on behalf of Department of History and Tourism and this program of 3 days seminar on recent archaeological discoveries in Tamil Nadu is very important in the sense it will help to uh, create a kind of awareness among the scholars and students about this subject of archaeology, which is gaining popularity day by day. Today, I'm going to speak about uh, the archaeological excavations of Musiri, um, uh, a site which is called Pattanam, and it is identified with the ancient settlement of Muchiri. My talk will focus on the references to Musiri in the literature and also uh, the excavation results, what have been excavated at this site and what we know about this particular site. So I'll start explaining one by one. But I have about 110 slides. I hope I'll be able to finish within the time of 1 hour. Uh, right, we'll go to the first slide. This slide explains the Indian Ocean. If you want to understand the history of Tamilagam or even India, we need to see this region as a whole. We cannot see Tamil Nadu as an exclusively distinct region. Same way, India is also not an exclusively distinctive region because the kind of perspectives that we get based on the modern day maps, modern day nation boundaries, is entirely different from ancient and medieval landscapes. That is why these kinds of maps become very important. You will know how these regions were well connected in the ancient times. Even if you are talking about urbanization in Tamil Nadu or the ancient cities and town, you can see the connections expanding into the Africa and Europe and Asian worlds, what we would call as Afro-Eurasian world. That is why this particular map, and for the first time in the history of South Asia, or even beyond, we have evidence for cross-regional interaction from the Indus Valley civilization. Then, in the early historic times, lot of interactions took place in this region, in the Indian Ocean region, and all these regions were linked. That led to the development of number of towns along the coast. So I am not trying to argue the reason for the development of ports on the coast is entirely external. It is both internal as well as external. But the coastal ports as well as the towns owed partly to the external factors which we cannot deny. If you look at the archaeological evidence, if you look at the literary evidence, we get a lot of data for the interconnectivity in the coastal ports. That is why this particular map I am showing here. Same way, if you look at all these ancient texts, for example, the Periplus, it clearly suggests the interaction that was happening in the Indian Ocean region, in the Roman, along with the Roman world. So this particular text of Periplus is very important because that presents the interconnectivity very beautifully. It also talks about various ports and various regions and various commodities that were traded. So Periplus in a sense brings out the interconnectivity in the Afro-Eurasian world very beautifully. And the same idea is expressed by several texts. So we get to know very clearly that from the beginning or a little before the beginning of the Common Era or Christian era, many regions were interacting. Many regions were exchanging ideas, exchanging goods, people were moving, and this was an important factor that contributed to the development of coastal ports. There is no doubt about that. Coming to the Indian Ocean exchange or trade relationship, we get a lot of sources, and these sources are presented in this particular map. We have Greek historians Strabos' geography talking about the region and the interaction. Periplus, as already we saw, Pliny's natural history, Ptolemy's geography, Musseri's papyrus, what is known as Vienna papyrus, and a comedy play known as Chariton, and Pythagorean table, Cosmos, Indigo, Plutus. So all these external texts, they talk very clearly about various ports or the activities of India, clearly suggesting the cross-regional connections that were established even before the beginning of Common Era. So these texts are very valuable, and they supplement the sources that are available to us. This is Pythagorean table. It is a map of Roman period time which was copied later on, currently in the Vienna Museum. This is one of the earliest maps available on South India or even this part of the world, and you can see Sri Lanka there, and there is a marking of Mussoories, Lacus Mussoories, Templum Augusti, and all that. So this is one important evidence suggesting the importance of southern part of India and the entire India in fact, and also the Tamilagam region, which witnessed the development of ports. Thus we get a lot of sources on the urbanization process that happened before the beginning of Common Era in the Tamilagam. So that is the evidence, and for this interactions of the Indian Ocean trade or Indo-Roman trade, otherwise known as, we get a lot of archaeological evidence in the form of excavation. This is the excavation at Archimedu conducted by Mortimer Wheeler, this was one important excavation that provided a firm chronological framework for South Indian archaeology. So this is something very important, and this excavation for long served as a main source for understanding Indo-Roman trade. And later on, when other sites are being excavated, we come to know that this trade was not just confined to Archimedu. There were several settlements like Archimedu along the coast. Unfortunately, we have not extensively excavated them. We have not really published on these ports extensively like the way Archimedu has been done throughout the 20th century. Now scholars are realizing that this trade of Indian Ocean exchange or Indo-Roman exchange cannot be understood just by excavating one or two sites, and we need to excavate the entire settlements along the coast to understand the real dimensions of this particular Indo-Roman trade. And now, look at the Roman coins. This is well known. We have a lot of Roman coins distributed in India, and their concentration is mainly in South India. And some of these coins of later period, they are found in Sri Lanka. As far as coins are concerned, there is a problem of curative value. So when you find a hoard at a particular spot, it may have coins of first century CE or second century or third century, but we do not know when exactly that hoard was deposited. The hoard could have come in the later period. However, coins are an important source, and the literature very beautifully explains that coins were traded as part of this Indian Ocean exchange. So their distribution also tell a story. Similarly, amphora, the Roman wine amphora, fishers and olive oil amphoras, They were traded as part of the commodities, and these commodities are gone. But we have these amphora fragments found in different parts of South India and also India, and they tell a very beautiful story. The amphora shards from Archimedu have been studied by Elizabeth Lidingville, and recently Roberta Tomber, that is in 2008, she has published a book on pots and pepper titled Pots and Pepper. That is an important book that summarizes all the evidences related to Indian Ocean trade, mainly ceramic materials that are found in the region of Indian Ocean, mainly from Roman and Empire and also in India. And this publication brings out how these amphora shards are distributed in all across. Again, testifying the references in the Sangam text, where we find a beautiful reference to, Yavanar Nankalam Tanda Tankamal Teral. Actually, this poem talks about the fine wine brought by the Yavana ships or Yavana ceramic containers. We do not know what exactly the term kalam means. So we find all kinds of evidences for the Indian Ocean trade, and this is another ceramic called rouleted ware. It is actually a dish, a plate of fine fabric. Originally, it was considered to be a Roman pottery. Nowadays, scholars agree that it was an Indian pottery, most probably made in the Ganga Brahmaputra region based on XRD analysis, X-ray diffraction analysis. This is a technique used by archaeologists to study the mineral properties of the ceramics to identify the provenance. For example, if you have a pottery found in a particular region, its source may be elsewhere. So therefore, if you undertake XRD analysis or neutron activation, other analysis of the pottery fragment by making it into a powder, analyzing the minerals that are available and also trace elements. Similarly, you analyze the clay source of different regions. You can find a match where exactly a pottery was used. So this technique was adopted for understanding rouleted ware. Now it is convincingly argued that Ganga Brahmaputra Delta, that is near Kolkata region, was possibly the source of this ceramics. But there are scholars who believe there could be some other source also. Currently, this is an accepted view. And this ceramics is also important because wherever we find these ceramics, we can establish that the network of early historic trade and exchange prevailed there. This is important. This is another map showing the concentration of rouleted ware. This map is from Schenk, a scholar, German scholar who has excavated at Tissa Maharama in Sri Lanka. Now we are coming to the Tamilagam region, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, located in the southern part of India, and next to Sri Lanka. This particular region is very important because if you look at the map, Indian Ocean map, you can very well understand that India is in the center of Indian Ocean. So any kind of ship or other movement that happened in the early times, when it crossed the Indian Ocean, say from West Asia or from the Red Sea region or from Africa, some mainly northern part of Africa, when they were trying to cross the Indian Ocean using the monsoon winds, they had to touch India. So preferably they touched the southern part and tip. And when after crossing the Arabian Sea, they would rest here and then fill the goods and sources for their travel, and then move on to Southeast Asia. Similarly, Southeast Asian ships also probably also ships from China, they landed in the southern part of India and then loaded the goods and exchanged their product, and then they went to beyond wherever they want. Sometimes the southern part of India acted as a transshipment point. So this is very important because when we have sites like Arikemedu in Tamil, in Pondicherry, and Arhankulam and Kaveri Pumpatinam in Tamil Nadu and Pattanam in Kerala and several other sites in Gujarat and other coasts. We are not discussing about them. And this region, in a sense, also served as a transshipment point because goods that were coming from Southeast Asia, they landed here, and then the ships that were already waiting here in South India, they took them to West Asia or wherever they are. So this kind of trade in segment did happen in the early period because traveling such a long distance from say Rome to East Asia or Southeast Asia took a long time. So these kind of laps were used for transporting goods. So this particular trade network is an important factor contributing to the urbanization process partly. I wouldn't say the urbanization in the early historic period was entirely dependent upon these interaction, but definitely these interactions did help contribute to the rise of the towns. Now we are looking at the map of Tamil Nadu, where we have the important ports marked right from say Arkimedu, Kaveri Pumpattinam, Adahankulam, and also in Sri Lanka, Mantai. Now there are two views. Mantai is also identified with the port near Kannur, and there is one view that port of Mandai is in Sri Lanka, and as mentioned in the Sangam literature, there are there were ports with the same name in different contexts also. For example, Tondi, and we have Korkai. Coming to Kerala, what is now Kerala as part of ancient Tamil had Tondi, Musri, and Pattanam, the excavated site, Bekare, Nelkinta, or Belita. But many of these ports have not been identified on the ground. Although there are beautiful references in the literature, we only now know about Pattanam, which has been excavated, and the literature talks about Musri, more Musri or Musris in Greek language, and the excavation at the site of Pattanam has revealed a lot of important evidence. That's what we are going to see today. And now we can see these important ports and inland centers of Tamil Nadu. It is very important to understand these also, even before we move to the site of Pattanam. We can see that in the early historic times, several port towns and internal towns means inland towns emerged, and also we have evidence of these Sangam age kings or vendors like Chera Chola Pandya emerging at key centers, and their capitals being described, and some of the poems like Madurai Kanchi, Pattinapalai, they talk about these towns. Archaeological excavations at Kidadi and Urayur, Karur, Kodumanal and Kanjipuram, they have revealed a lot of evidences for urban features like the use of bricks or roof tiles, and evidence for producing industrial activities, clearly suggesting that there was a transformation around the beginning of Common Era. And also we find a lot of evidence of Tamil Brahmi or Tamili script. Some of these inscriptions are found on the rock shelters near Madurai and other places, and also pottery inscriptions. They are also important, clearly heralding the beginning of early historic period. So this is the background, and here I am showing Amarnath's from ASI, Amarnath's exploration, and the sites that he identified in the Vaigai river valley. Professor Rajan has surveyed in this area, and along with Balamurugan and other people, he has identified several sites. And this is where the important site of Pulimon Kombai, where Professor Rajan, Yatish Kumar and Selva Kumar, his students, they found an important hero stone with Brahmi inscription in the Vaigai river valley. So when you look at this map, you clearly understand that there were settlements all along. And there were some settlements which were important, what we call as urban centers. Some settlements, probably they were regional centers. Some settlements were actually small villages. So now there is a tendency to, attribute all sites as Kiradi. People find find some sites and some pottery, and then they claim a site equivalent to Kiradi. But clearly, sites like Kiradi were of a separate class. You cannot expect all the sites to be Kiradi. Because Kiradi was probably an urban center and industrial production center. So several such settlements existed, and also small villages were equally important. Now we will move on to the port of Musiri, which is which was a very celebrated port, which were described in literature, Indian as well as foreign, non-Indian, Greco-Roman literature, and this Sangam literature is a very important source talking about the developments in South India and mainly in Tamilagam about 2000 years ago. We have several texts. Some of them are of slightly later in date, mainly Padinin Kirkanaku text, and we have these 18 texts which are very important, mainly this Ettutogai and Pathupattu. These two groups of texts which are very important, they are considered early in date, and these two texts, they tell a lot about the urbanization and the social cultural life of the Tamils, say from 3rd century BCE. Sometimes people say that some of these poems could date back earlier to down to 3rd century CE. We have 8 collections of poems known as Ettutogai, and then Pattu Pattu, 10 idylls, the long songs. Mainly in Ettutogai collection, there are 2 songs which we are taking up for study today in the context of the port of Musiris. So we will take this Akananuru. Again, we have this classification of 400 poems in Akananuru, and this concept of Agam and Puram, they are important in the Sangam anthologies. Agam refers to the internal way of life, love life and family life, whereas Puram refers to the war and battle and martial activities involving outside the house. Maybe you can classify this as things that are happening in the inner interior part of the house, or from inside and or within the mind, and things that are happening outside by action in the landscapes. So A.K. Ramanujan translated this as interior landscape. In this, we are going to take one particular poem, poem number 149, which is very important. This particular poem very beautifully narrates town of Musiri. But while talking about this particular town, the poem also brings out the story. So it starts with a trade route and explains how people were traveling in the trade route, leaving their kith and kin in search of wealth. So that is what this poem, Sirupun Sidalai, சேன் முயன்று எடுத்த நெடுஞ்செம் புற்றத்து ஓங்கு இறை முனையின் புல்லறை இருப்பை தொல்லை வான்பூ பெருங்கை என்கின் இருங்கிளை கவரும் அத்த நீலிடை போகி நன்றும். So this is the first segment. Here there is a reference to a termite hill. So the termite hill, which was built by the small termites and with a lot of efforts, and it creates a very tall termite mound. Within that mound, the bear along with its the group of bear, it actually destroys that to recover the termites. Bear which are living in the wild, they have the habit of searching for these termite mounds and eating the termites. So that is the context explained here. And why Atta Niludai, actually that is the trade route. Along the trade route, these kinds of scenes are seen when the hero moves away in the forest area, he crosses the area where these kind of activities are happening, like bear searching and destroying a termite mound for its food. So which implies that this trade route was very risky. Then say நன்றும் அரிது செய் விழுப்புருள் விழுப்புருள் எளிதின் பெறினும் வாரேன் வாழி. So what it says is, so you make to earn wealth, you have to cross such risky trade route, which are trade routes which are infested with these kind of animals, and searching they can really harm you. And yeah, while traveling you earn the while traveling you face all these risks, and ultimately by traveling across you earn the wealth. So this is very important, because this particular poem brings out how people were traveling. Because if you look at the archaeological evidence, we find Tamil Brahmi script in Bernike in Egypt, and also Qusayr al-Qadim, recently in Sumuram in Oman Peninsula, and in Southeast Asia, Kuan Lukpat, we get a lot of Tamil Brahmi inscriptions. So that evidence can be correlated here. So here, very clearly, Tamils were traveling in the around the beginning of Common Era to as far as Egypt, down to Thailand, as far as the evidence we have in hand. Probably they moved further away. So this poet brings out this idea of moving away sometime. Traveling in such a long distance means that you have to leave your family and you have to leave your love life and move away for 5-6 months, traveling down to Egypt, or then up Egypt or down to Southeast Asia, and then in the process you leave your love life. So that is being portrayed here. So the hero says that even if you offer the wealth that is coming from such a hard work, that I will not leave my love life. That is the idea conveyed here in this poem. The next line says, "N.N.J. Seralar." This is a line oft quoted. So now we are looking at the context. Now, when we are studying the literature, we should not just take 2 lines or 2-3 sentences and try to interpret. That is one of the problem we have. When you are referring to an inscription for your research, you need to look at the inscription from top to bottom, and also its context. That is very important. So actually the single poem could be explained in a very detailed manner, because there are also hidden meanings. So why poet puts this story of a bear disturbing a termite, there are some hidden meanings. We will not, that is purely a literary kind of analysis. We are not going to undertaking a literary analysis here. What we are trying to do is extract some historical information. So when you look at Sangam poems, you get multiple layers of meanings. So sometimes something is said, but the poet wants to imply something else as a hidden meaning. That is very important. Here we are trying to look at why this town of Musiri is described. Seralar, this is where the line starts. Seralar, very clearly, the poem says that the town of Musiri was under the control of Seralar. சுள்ளியம் பேரியாற்று வெண்ணுரை கலங்க யவனர் தந்த வினைமான் நன்கலம் பொன்னொடு வந்து கரியொடு பெயரும் வளம் கெழு முசிறி ஆர்ப்பு எழ. So see, what happens is, in the port town of Cheras, where we have Chulli and Periyar, there were 2 rivers. Probably sometime people say that it is one river with 2 names. We don't know. Maybe that is not very clear. Chulliyam, Periyar. Probably the river was known as Chulli as well as Periyar, because it was the bigger or larger river. Vennurai Kalanga, beating the white foam of this Periyar river, the beautiful ships of Yamana came with pon, gold, metal, or gold and other precious metals. பொன்னோடு வந்து கரியோடு பெயரும். Kari means pepper. So the Roman ships came with gold and returned with paper. These are the 2 main commodities mentioned here. Probably they were exported in bulk imported in bulk. Coins came in bulk and pepper went in bulk. But apart from that, they also exported other items like ivory and other materials, which are not explained here because the poet has taken the two important commodities. Valam Kedu Musiri. This is another important concept that is brought out here. Arpu. So there was some commotion in the Valam Kedu Musiri. Valam is very important, that is the wealth. So when the poet talks about Musiri, he says Valam Kedu Musiris, which means that the town was very fertile, with wealthy, with a lot of resources. And Valam Kedu Musiri, Arpu வளை அரிஞ்சமம் கடந்து படிமம் வவ்விய நெடுநல் யானை அடுபோர் செழியன். Here Cherian comes. We had Cheralar and here Cherian, which is the title of Pandyas. So Pandya invades the town and he took a padimam, an image, probably a bronze image or some image, we don't know. Only the poet says padimam. So here another concept is brought out where the Pandyan who was controlling Madurai, he comes to the town of Musiris and he fights and takes away an image. What could be this image? Could this be an image of some king or Roman king? We don't know. That is for speculation. But this is a very important idea brought out by this particular poem. So then Kodinudang Marihin Kudar Kuda Adu Palpuri Manjai Velvel Kodi Uyariya Wodia Vidavin Nedion Kundratu. This is Tiruparankundram near Madurai. Vandubada Nidiya Kundusunai Nilathu. It talks about the Tiruparankundram and a small water pond and எதிர்மனை பிணையல் அன்ன இவள் அரிமதர் மழைக்கண் தென் பனிக்கொள்ளவே. The lover's eye is described, which is as beautiful as the flower in the pond of Tiruparankundram. So here the hero says he doesn't want the heroine to cry and the drops of sorrow trickling from the eyes of his lover cannot be tolerated, even if you offer even if I earn the wealth as much of Musiri or very rare wealth, I don't want to leave. That is the idea portrayed by the poet here. So here the meaning and the context, we can go on analyzing, we don't have much time, but what you get here is that the hero is portrayed as an ideal person by the poet, that he is not interested in the material wealth. For him, love is more important. So that is the idea highlighted. So here probably the poets were portraying ideal characters, but in reality that was not the case. As I said already, we get Tamil Brahmi in Egypt, we get Tamil Brahmi inscriptions in Oman, and also we get them in Southeast Asia, and these guys were traveling, these Tamil traders were traveling, and this sort of led to a kind of disintegration in the family, in the love life. See the case of Iron Age, you move the scene to back 1000 years or 500 years. Iron Age people were living in the local area, they were depending upon either pastoralism or cultivation, and they were leading a life in which the family was together. In this kind of trade context where people were looking for wealth in the form of Roman gold coin, which the poet talks as Valam Kedu Musiris, and they leave their loved ones and move far away. And this creates some kind of anomaly. And even now you can see that in the 20th century it so happened many of the people in Tamil Nadu who did not want to join army, sometimes people who were plowing the field, they were forcefully taken away, my father used to say, and people used to be scared and they used to move away. And sometimes even today we have people and students who do not want to move out of their village. They say, I'm fine in my village, I want to earn and live here. So this kind of contradiction exists, and people Nowadays, you can see they move far away, leaving their parents in search of employment and education. And sometimes parents in the old days, they may not prefer. And, this create a kind of disturbance in the social or family system. Such an idea is portrayed in this particular poem very beautifully. And this is how we should see the context of this poem. About 2000 years ago, when people were started earning wealth out of this Indian Ocean or Indo-Roman trade, what happened was they had to travel by carrying goods, or they had to go to the main urban centers, leaving their villages. So, and many people were doing, some did not. So here, this poet has chosen this topic of, seeing an idealized hero. It is in this context the poet describes the fight between Cheras and Cholas and the control over the town. And the entire idea is brought out how the trade routes were infested with risk. And this is what we get from this particular poem. Now you can understand why this poet talks about Musuri. Normally we study, Yamanar Tanda Vinayman Nankalam Ponnodu Vandu Kariyodu Perum. But if you expand and look at the entire poem, you understand how the poet has contextualized these two lines of Musuris with the entire socio-economic scenario. So that is what important. So what we get is that the new kind of economy, like what is happening now, we talk about demonetization, shifting from currency to the card, paperless transaction. So at that point of time, so people were moving from one kind of economy, at least in a limited sense. Some people were willing to travel, willing to risk their family life, the comfort of home and love, and they wanted to move away to faraway areas to earn wealth. So that is what brought out by this particular poem of 149. So this paper, actually this idea I have published in a paper. It was published in 2015, and here I am explaining this in this particular webinar. Now we will go to another important poem. I have taken up only two poems because my intention is to present you how these poems can be excavated. In a sense, we can critically analyze them. This is another poem. Again, I am not going into a literary analysis, into deep kind of text excavation, looking for the meanings. I am taking only the historically relevant information for reconstructing the socio-economic history. This from 343 poem. This is another beautiful poem. This is the idea that I have for the history students. Most of the time we read secondary literature, we go after sometime reading original texts, for example, Arthasastra, these kind of poems, and rereading them can give you a lot of new insights. This is another important poem which talks about the interactions that happened. Mean noduthu nel kuvai e மிசை அம்பியின் மனை மறுக்குந்து மனை கவைய கரிமூடையால் களிச்சும்மைய கரைக்கல குருந்து. So here this poem talks about the surroundings around the town of Musuris, where the fishermen's ambi kind of boats, they come, they exchange fish for rice. So they give fish and they get the rice, which is mean noduthu. Noduttal is an important term which talks about the exchange. So they give fish for rice, or rice paddy. It is a poetic exaggeration. They resemble the houses on the land. Houses on the land, probably at Musuris. Similarly, the pepper bags, curry modayal, that is very important. The pepper bags were stored at the port of Musuris, and they were stored in huge houses, Manai Kavaya, and then they look like the boats on the uh, river, boats on the river course. So this is the contracts that is explained here in the poet. Here the poet says that the ships or boats, small boats, look like houses, and the houses with pepper, they look like boats. That is the contrasting idea explained by the poet here, who says that the entire town of Musiris and the surroundings were bustling with activities. We can't distinguish from boat from the house from the boat. Everything looks alike, probably suggesting the slanting roof of the structures. That is what brought out here. Then next line, we in the Purananuru, I have selected this because this is a very important poem. Kalam tanda purparisam kalittoniyan karai சேர்க்குன்னு மலைத்தாரமும் கடல் தாரமும் தலை பெய்து வருணர்க்கு ஈயும் புனலங்கண்லின் பொலந்தார் குட்டுவன் முழங்கு கடவுள் முழவின் முசிறி என்ன நலஞ்சால் விழுப்பொருள் பணிந்து வந்து கொடுப்பினும் புறையர் அல்லோல் வரையலல். This is another important idea that is brought out here. Kalam tanda purparism. This is here the Roman ship is talked about. The purparism, actually the gold or metal coins, they are brought by the Kalithoni, small boats called Kalithoni. They bring the wealth from the Roman ship, which means that Roman ship was not directly coming. In the previous poem, Agnanuru 149, we saw that the Roman ships coming into the river Periyar, but here the another idea of Roman ships staying away and the small boats bringing the precious metal is spoken. Malaitharamum Kadaltharamum. So here this is where the network comes. The Chera king was controlling this area. He was getting the hill goods as well as the goods from the sea. Thalai Peidu, he mixes and gives it to the people who are Polandar Punalangallin, Polandar Kuttuvan. Probably a lot of toddy was drunk and the Kuttuvan was controlling Musiri. Murangu Kadal Mudavin Musiri. And Musiri was so close to the coast, the sea wave sound was something like a muravu, a kind of drum ornament. Nalanchal Vilupurul, that means very good wealth, very rarely earned wealth. Even if you offer such a good and rarely earned wealth in a humble manner, Purayar Allol Varayalal. So here the idea of ethnic, the heroine would not marry, would not be given in marriage to anybody other than the Purayan. Probably the idea of ethnocentric perspective comes here. So the father will not offer the girl in marriage. So then people, probably a powerful king who comes to this chief of this village, or this scene is happening elsewhere. So this idea of denying the daughter to a influential or powerful king leads to a war. That is what conveyed in this poem. And this village had a kind of a defense with tall boundaries and probably a wall, other wooden frame, and the people who came away, they were ready to invade by placing a ladder. And because of this chief not offering the girl to a person or an influential chief or a king, we don't know whom, who sought this girl in a marriage, and this father denying this led to a kind of war that is spoken here. Again, the underlying idea here is very important. What is the underlying idea? That even if you offer the wealth of Musiris, the lady will not marry somebody who is not a Purayan. So that is the idea brought out here. This is very important concept here. So again, as we said in the context of previous poem, in the early historic time, people were earning new form of wealth through this trade, and probably new kind of rich people emerged, and they were flaunting their wealth. So this particular poem highlights the idea that some of the people did not prefer this new kind of wealth, and they preferred the kinship related bond and the network that the lady will not be given into somebody who is not a Purayan. So that ethnocentric idea is brought out in this poem. For that, the new economy and the new wealth and its importance is spoken in this. This is very important poem. These two poems I have taken as a case study. That is why I title my presentation Musri in Literature. My intention is to present only these two poems, and these two poems very clearly bring out the idea how the economy was transforming from the Iron Age to early historic, and here we get this cultural attitude, how people feel about the new wealth. We are excavating archaeological site, we are finding a lot of beads, that is fine. So they tell a different story. But when you look at these poems, the poems obviously have exaggeration, we cannot directly take, but the idea of this, transformation in economy and the new form of wealth which dislodges the old kind of social and economic relationship, also probably it contributes to new kind of upward mobility. And probably this happens, and in such context people were some were not preferring the new economic transformation. That is the idea brought out here. And these two poems, the poets were in a sense seem to favor the traditional economy. Probably, there is a tendency even today. Now we have a kind of nostalgic as well as kind of love for traditional things which are traditional, like sometimes we completely want to discard science, sometimes we say that our ancestors had everything, like old traditional medicine system. Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to present a case. In a sense, sometimes we have a nostalgic feeling that is brought out in in this particular poem. I'm not trying to argue that science is everything. A lot of things have really changed our life. If you look at the way we live, in the name of science, many things have happened. In the name of market economy, we abandoned many of our traditional knowledge system. That is definitely for sure. We were depending upon a lot of local remedies. Now we were drawn into this market kind of system, kind of corporate kind of system, where we are looking for solutions in a centralized manner. In early societies, all these problems were solved at the local level. So that is not part of my lecture. What I wanted to highlight is that the mindset of these poets are brought out in these two poems. That's what I am trying to explain here. And it is why, again, when a particular poem, we need to really get into the minds of the poets. When a particular theme is selected, the poet feels about it. Same way in history writing too, we take certain themes. That is why history writing can never be complete. Why we take up a research topic, why we select a topic for writing a book, because we feel about it. So that is how we bring out one particular aspect of history, and we try to make people believe that this is what history is. In fact, history has multiple dimensions. Similarly, these two poets took away the two themes, and they try to explain in the context of Musris, explain in the wealth of Musris. So that is the poetic part of my presentation. Now I will move over to the Pattanam excavation. We are moving into the archaeological part. I think I have taken already a lot of time. I try to browse through. I have already presented about Pattanam in several contexts. So the site of Pattanam is very important in the sense that it was identified mainly in the 21st century, although early researchers have explored in the late 1990s. KP Shahjan has collected some ceramics from there, and also some local people they have collected. And as part of UC College team, Cherian has explored that area. And these kind of initial research apart, KP Shahjan undertook his doctoral research in which he identified several sites, and his collections are very important. That led to the uh, unfolding of this excavations at Pattanam. A first paper was published by KP Shahjan, in which Roberta Tomber and PJ Cherian and I was also part of it. It was published in Journal of Roman Archaeology. Then Professor Cherian from Kerala Council of Historical Research undertook excavations in detail, and 10 seasons of excavations. Currently, he is also undertaking excavation as part of a new organization called PAMA, and these excavations have brought to light a lot of information. There are so many publications available in the internet, and an exhibition was organized at National Museum, and a booklet has come out. A lot of publications are available. You are free to search the information. So what I am trying to present is some of the points related to this particular port town. So good morning to you all. This is the second part of my presentation. Earlier, I presented about Musri in literature. Now we are moving on to Pattanam, the site located in Ernakulam district near Paravur town in Kerala, which has been hypothetically identified with Musri or Musiris. There are a debate about it. And Musiris or Musiri being conventionally Kodungalur, I think that it is not a debate at all now, and we should see the entire Periyar River Valley as Pattanam. And this finding, as I already presented in the part one of my talk on Musiri, that KP Shahjan and Cherian and Roberta Tomber and several other scholars contributed to the development of this particular research project, and Kerala government supported with many people taking active interest, and this town or the excavation has developed into an important international research project. And Pattanam is interestingly located in the Periyar Delta. Now, if you look at the map, you can see that the Periyar River moving here as my cursor moves, and then we have a kind of Vaipu, Pudu Vaipin Island, and Vaipin Island here, and there is some backwater body, and which are and this kind of new kind of Vaipin land, Puduvaipu, probably emerged in 1343. That is the theory. And you can see another river parallel course, Tapalli Kayal, and the site of Pattanam, and a lot of lagoon kind of environment. And the name itself is important. See, when we start undertaking historical research, we should start questioning the place name. Sometimes, people, misinterpret place name. They directly twist and formulate and, come up with new names. Again, people had a problem with the place names. People were actually having a lot of attitudinal problems to their village names. Sometimes people would not like certain names because their neighbors will make fun of the names. Then they will really, modify it. So a lot of things happens with the names, place names. And but interestingly, the suffix Pattanam actually refers to a town in a modern sense, both in Tamil and Malayalam. In Tamil, it is called Pattinam. In Malayalam, it is Pattanam. And in the medieval period, Pattanams existed in the interior areas. We have Tenkashi Pattanam, several settlements, merchant guild settlements were known as Pattanam, and they were basically marketplace. But interestingly, if you go to the early historic period, Pattinam was the coastal town. We have Pattinam as a settlement near Arikemedu. We have Visakhapattinam. We have Patan in Gujarat. So this term is very important. Why this particular term has to be applied? So probably it was not Dravidian in origin, and it has been correlated with the Prakrit term Pattinam, and Arthasastra mentions about it. And some settlements were given the name Pattanam or Pattinam in the early historic period to demarcate their new function, acting as a kind of market and port town. So that is very important. We have Pattinapalai, Kaveri Pumpattinam, and several Pattinams as important towns. This term occurs in early Tamil literature. Then we have Munturai. Probably that is the Tamil name. Turai is another important point of access to a river or a water body, or even sea, entering into sea, Turai or Tura in Malayalam. So this term is also very important. So what I wanted to highlight is the place name is very important in understanding history. It's the first stepping stone, but it is not everything. But we cannot, just imagine place names. We need to carefully reconstruct place names on the basis of this particular literature and contemporary name, oral tradition, and inscriptions and everything. It is a very careful work, not just casually taking one name here and another name here and coming up with a solution. So place name study also can be a very careful attempt. Place names also has meanings. They are not, people did not name just like that. Place names had meanings. They can tell a lot historical geography and also socio-economic factors, and also about a landscape perspectives, why a particular name was given to a particular place. Okay, we'll not go into that, and we'll move into the next slide. Okay, excuse me. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, this particular slide is not very visible. This presents the various cultural periods of the town of Pattanam. I'll change the slide design so that it becomes readable. Yeah, this is better. So here we are dealing with the tentative chronology of the Pattanam. Excavations are revealed Iron Age, early historic, and early medieval. Late medieval is not there. Probably we have evidence for intense occupation at Pattanam about 5th century CE. And then in the early medieval period, probably there was a gap. We don't have much clear information. This needs to be researched. Probably the site had a limited occupation between 5th and the 10th century. Maybe few settlements have existed, few houses could have existed. In the late medieval also there was a gap, and this was the time when Kodungalur became very center, and Kodungalur also had early settlements. Probably we need to undertake more research, and some of these sites might have been destroyed by the river Periyar. That is why we have very limited evidence in those areas, and definitely we have evidence for modern occupation at the site of Pattanam, and this is a excavation one trench, as I have shown it as a sample to show how this deposit of 3 meter has helped us to understand the various periods. And right at the bottom we have evidence for occupation in the Iron Age with a few black and red ware pottery, which needs to be further dated, because our understanding of this period is also very limited, because only few dates are available. But clearly the activities took a turn from about 3rd, 4th century BCE, and we get clear evidence for occupation till about the 5th century CE. Again, this chronology has been proposed based on limited 14 dates, and we need to refine. But this is enough for you to see that the site covers about 3 meter with a lot of evidence. This is what we call as a layer. We have multiple layers representing different period. Again, when you are dealing with an archaeological site, you can never find things in situ. We think that sites are undisturbed. These are all imagination. Most of the sites undergo a lot of changes. People really dig and build and destroy, rebuild, and you find lot of things happening. This happens even when people were living, also happens after later on when people come and settle. Obviously any kind of settlement is always modified or reworked, and then always disturbed. So that is why any kind of evidence we get in the town is always should be taken with a lot of caution. We can never assume that towns were the archaeological sites were in a very pristine condition, because a lot of activities going on disturbing the materials. So now I'll move on to the Pattanam town layout. We can definitely call Pattanam as an urban center, as Kiradi or Urayur, Karur, Adahankulam, and Arikamedu and Kavari Pumbatinam. How can we call a town? How it is different from any other rural settlement? Clearly, by looking at the town layout, we have a grid pattern layout, and the town was laid perpendicular to the coastline and the water body, that we know from the excavations at Pattanam. And the town was located adjacent to waterways, linking, that was very important, linking the site with the main trade routes, inland waterways. And we have evidence for the use of bricks, rectangular bricks, and this led to the square or rectangular building, and also streets, access to the town. And we have evidence of wharf, warehouse, and several other buildings, industrial activities, ring well, a well used for water, drawing water, and toilet or soakage pit kind of features. So on the basis of these factors, we call Pattanam an urban center. Yeah, Pattanam, definitely an urban center. This is one of the structure, what we call as wharf. Here, interestingly, we found a beautiful architecture of making a boundary between the waterway and the settlement by building a brick wall, and then preparing a kind of base for the access with pottery, ceramic sherds, and then a kind of laterite filled platform, and that was created at this particular site. Kind of laterite platform was created at this particular site, and in that nearby we excavated a canoe, probably made of single log of wood, about 6 meter roughly in length. And interestingly, it also it 6 meter, I am not sure about it, the detail, but it is very interesting canoe. It is definitely a long canoe which is decomposed. And also we have evidence of bollards that were used for tying the canoe or other boats, and also the bollard served as a kind of protection for the wooden boats and canoes, so that they would not get damaged. So the bollards were made of teak wood, and the boat was this canoe was made of Artocarpus or Anjali tree. This is a very important find, in the sense that it shows some kind of settlement organization, and kind of, unlike any other small settlements where you wouldn't have a proper system for landing, here they provided a proper system for landing with access point, so that people need not step into the mud. And we have evidence of these kind of brick structures at Pattanam, again suggesting some planning in the organization. Some more brick structure, another warehouse like structure near the wharf, some more square structure with multiple phases of reconstruction, another brick complexes. So we get a lot of these structures. Sometimes pots were buried, probably meant for storage. Here you have a terracotta ring well at this site, again roof tiles triple grooved roof tiles that are characteristic of early historic period. Again, a close-up of roof tile. Uh, you see here, these roof tiles were used in the early historic period. The roof tiles had three grooves. One groove on the extreme left was meant for interlocking with the next roof tile. Other two grooves were meant for the draining of water. You have a hole, probably they were secured to the rafter on the roof. These kind of roofs were introduced in the early historic time in South India. A soakage jar or toilet like feature at the side, another a brick wall with a jar buried. This kind of tradition is common. And now we will move on to the material culture and contacts. Material culture can really suggest contacts with the foreign lands. We have turquoise glazed pottery excavated at the site of Pattanam, studied by Red Kennett, and they suggest that they are from Iran, Iraq, in that West Asian region, and some of them were of Sasanian. They suggest that people of that area really came here for travel possibly, and they used these vessels for bringing materials. Again, turquoise glazed pottery, and again torpedo jars of West Asian origin. They are also indicating contacts. Roman amphora. This is what described in the Sangam literature as Yavana Nankalam Tanda Tankamal Teral. So these Roman wine also, and fish sauce, and also probably they were used by the traders and also the elite here, because we find amphora in the interior land. We found a lot of amphora sherds, and you look at the distribution of the amphora, mainly concentrated in the lower layers, and then we find terra sigillata, or Italian or Mediterranean pottery with a kind of red slip, deep red slid, and rouletted ware, about which I already mentioned. We found almost complete rouletted ware with 60 to 70%. We found also a lot of amphora and rouletted ware sherds. And if you see, interestingly, rouletted ware occurs right at the beginning of the site, suggesting contact with East Bengal and northern India in the early period. Now, we will come to the functions of Pattanam. What actually were the activities undertaken at Pattanam? We have evidence for industrial activities, stone bead making, probably glass bead making. Glass smelting, we don't have any evidence. Probably glass beads were made. We need to find more evidence. Iron smelting, copper working, gold working, jewelry production, probably textile, about which we don't have much evidence. There is some evidence of fine textile, um, zari, or probably gold textile fabric. Evidence for coin minting, ceramic production, and probably warehousing. Pattanam, goods that came from the other places also were warehoused at this spot, and then they were exported through the Roman or other ships at particular point of time. Pattanam also acted as a market, and transshipment of goods, transshipment locus for Bay of Bengal region, China, and Southeast Asia. We should be very careful in perceiving the role of Pattanam. It was not just a local kind of product. In fact, yes, the amount of pepper that was available in the Western Ghats was one main factor, but Pattanam also had another role. Apart from serving the local commodity, it also served as a kind of transshipment point for goods, that ships that were coming from East Coast and Bengal and Southeast Asia. That is why Pattanam became an important center. So we should see Pattanam in the global and Indian Ocean context. We said already about stone bead making. These were the industrial activities taking place. Probably they were small scale activities contributing some minimum amount of activities, but we are seeing them prominently, whereas the bulk of pepper and everything, they are gone. The archaeology in that sense can show you some kind of partial representation of evidence in relation to the preservation condition. Some of the materials which are not preserved may not be seen. So what we see in large quantity may not be the actual, may not be the actual materials that were traded. Bulk of the materials are gone. We are getting only the preserved materials influenced by the site formation process. That we need to be very careful, because these materials may look very attractive, may appear in large volume, but there could be other materials that were traded, about which we may not get direct clues. That is one of the problems of archaeology. We get a lot of semi-precious stones, glass beads, beryl beads, and chips of bead waste production. They are found in large number. Cornelian, cameo blanks. Some of these cameo blanks are very beautiful. These raw materials could have come from elsewhere, probably from Gujarat or any region. That is why the ports, towns also acted as industrial centers, so that they could get a lot of materials and then they could work on the raw material to produce objects. Then we have these kind of glasswares, Roman glass objects, iron nails, chair copper coin. That is very important. Probably these coins were minted based on the metal that came through the trade. We find several varieties of lead coins. Also, lead is not available. A gold bar cut piece, and also a small ornament segment in the form of an amphora, clearly indicating the Roman influence in jewelry. We found a lot of Indian pottery, Chinese pottery of late 17th, 18th, 19th century, uh, uh, human bones, and then we have some frankincense crumbs that were also traded, and we also find a lot of organic remains. We found evidence of teak, anjali, cherata, kurumulagu, pepper, mundirikuru, seeds of grapes, anjali, eta, so many rice, wheat, green gram, green leaves, mango, gooseberry, and pepper, and then this katrikai or brinjal, or eggplant, or vendaka, or lady's finger, elaka, or elachi, and pana, palm trees evidence, adaka or arecanut, tudali, valerica or cucumber, anjali. So all these organic remains were found in some context. You can see these organic remains, and some more terra sigillata pottery, and then Fortuna intaglio. Again, this is very important find, that probably it was a property of a merchant, and Roman traders mainly believed that this would lead to prosperity. This goddess gave the fortune, that is why they were wearing it. But this ornament was found at Pattanam. Probably it was made here or it was lost. We have no idea. Amphora shirts, cornelian ball, and some organic remain, probably of coconut, and pottery, Chinese pottery, glass beads. Again, another intaglio of lion, probably made at Pattanam. And this is one of the products of Pattanam or ancient Tamilagam, where people were making ornaments and Roman glass. And this one is a chera copper coin with bow and arrow. Again, acts like ornament. Again, local design, suggesting that jewelers were very active at Pattanam, and local designs were also very popular. And this particular axe is very interesting, because it shows that how axe was crafted and how it was secured. We find similar chisels in iron bars in the megalithic burials, typically local feature. Again, glass and banded agate, and which was probably colored, a late Kuchiputan coin or late coin, and cornelian ball, spindle hole, probably suggesting weaving activity, stone objects, and some more pottery. And this is the wharf that I showed earlier, a good view. It's a huge structure with a brick wall, and this adjacent laterite paste included floor. That's what was very beautifully built, and then the canoe, long canoe. And these are some of the important evidence excavated at the site of Pattanam: cornelian and turquoise glazed pottery, glass, and material. So now I am coming to the end of my presentation. We'll look into the question of Musri. Was Pattanam Musri? This was the debate some 10 years back, we had 10, 15 years back, and now uh, we have got a better understanding that it is not necessary that only Pattanam could be Muslims. The entire region must have been a Muslim. There could have been many more settlements around Pattanam that probably contributed to the trade activities. When you are witnessing such a huge settlements, its activities cannot be seen only at Pattanam, and it was connected with many other network of settlements about which we need to undertake more research. And probably Kodungalur was also part of this Musri, and this region also had some settlement evidence. Thing is that we have not done enough excavations or explorations. Again, things have been destroyed by the activities of the river Periyar. So the evidence so far I presented would clearly tell why we can call Pattanam as an urban center. You saw about the descriptions of the poet talking about the new economy, new cultural values, new transformations in the socio-economic formations that could be deduced. So, and also the rich variety of material culture that tells us that Pattanam was entirely a different kind of settlement. We can call it definitely an urban settlement of that period. So to understand Pattanam, you need to understand the Iron Age rural settlements. We have excavated such sites. So in contrast with those rural settlements, Pattanam was urban center. When we talk about urban center, the concept of urban is different. An urban center in the early medieval period would be different. Urban center in a Roman civilization would be different. Urban center in an Indus Valley context would be different. Urban center in the medieval period or in the colonial period or post-medieval period. And urban center of before 1980s and before 2000 is different. Today's urban centers, major urban centers, they all have metros. So we should use the term urban center with a lot of caution. So in a limited sense, Pattanam was definitely an urban center when comparison to the other contemporary settlements of ancient Tamilagam. We should not draw parallel to northern India or in other regions where each region has its own kind of urban forms. That is very important, and it is in this context we call the process as urbanization in the early historic time. It had limited impact at key settlements, mainly dominant impact on the coast and powerful impact in the interior region. So this particular archaeological site of Pattanam tells us a story of the material culture and the urban form about 2000 years ago, and we need to undertake more scientific research